The cameras caught it for barely 3 seconds. Not a speech, not a scandal, not even a headline, just a look, a strange pause between Princess Leonor and her father, King Felipe VI, during a military appearance that most people probably forgot about the next morning. But I didn't forget it. Because the more I watch Leonor's rise, the more I keep asking myself one uncomfortable question. What if the greatest threat to Spain's future queen is not the media, not politics, not public pressure, but the only man who actually understands the weight of the crown? Her own father. And honestly, I think that possibility is way bigger than people realize. Because when you strip away the royal uniforms, the perfect speeches, the carefully staged palace photos, this story starts looking less like a fairy tale and more like a silent battle over control, legacy, and survival. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. The Spanish monarchy cannot afford another mistake. Not after everything that happened with Juan Carlos I. Not after years of scandals, exile stories, damaged trust, and headlines that nearly crushed the institution completely. Leonor is not just a daughter anymore. She's the repair project, and that changes everything, because suddenly every friendship matters. Every boyfriend rumor matters. Every public appearance matters. Even the way she smiles matters. That's not normal pressure for a teenager. That's political pressure disguised as royal tradition. And if you ask me, I think King Felipe knows exactly how dangerous this game really is. Which is why I don't believe he's simply guiding Leonor anymore. I think he's shaping her with extreme caution because he knows Spain could turn on the monarchy again faster than people expect. And that's where this gets fascinating. Because while Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, are presenting that polished, emotionally stable image in Britain, Spain feels completely different right now. More fragile, more tense, almost like the monarchy is balancing on thin glass while pretending the floor is solid. And Leonor, she's carrying that pressure at an age when most people are still figuring out who they even are. If you're new to Leonor's story, subscribe, I post every day. Because I genuinely think we are watching one of the most carefully managed royal transitions in modern Europe, and most people still think it's just about dresses, ceremonies, and waving from balconies. It's not. This is strategy, and honestly, sometimes it feels more like corporate succession planning than family life. I mean, think about it. Why has Leonor's military training been pushed so aggressively into the spotlight recently? Why do palace cameras constantly emphasize discipline, seriousness, sacrifice, endurance? Why are we repeatedly shown images of her sweating, marching, training, saluting? That's not random PR. That's deliberate branding. The palace wants Spain to see strength before they see emotion. And I think there's a reason for that. Because emotions destroyed the previous generation. That's the hidden subtext nobody says directly. King Felipe watched the monarchy nearly collapse under personal scandals, luxury controversies, and public resentment. He learned that modern royals are no longer protected by tradition alone. Today, perception is survival. Actually, scratch that. Perception is the crown itself. And this is where my opinion might sound controversial. I don't think Leonor is being raised primarily to be happy. I think she's being raised to be acceptable. There's a huge difference. One creates a person, the other creates a symbol. And symbols are controlled, carefully, relentlessly, sometimes brutally. You can even see it in the way Leonor speaks publicly now. There's precision in her tone that feels far older than her actual age. Almost like she understands there are invisible lines she cannot cross. And honestly, that's where I start wondering. How much freedom does a future queen truly have? Because people love the glamour of monarchy until they realize the institution often consumes the individual. Look at history. The crown always asks for something in return. Sometimes privacy, sometimes identity, sometimes love. And this is why I believe the only man capable of stopping Leonor's reign is the same man trying to protect it. Felipe. Not through betrayal, not through cruelty, but through fear. Fear of failure, fear of repeating history, fear of losing the monarchy entirely. Because if Felipe ever believed Leonor was becoming a risk instead of a solution, I honestly think he would tighten control instantly. Not publicly, of course. Royal families never fight in public anymore. Modern monarchies learned from Prince Harry and Meghan Markle that public family fractures can become global entertainment overnight. So today the control is quieter, more psychological, more strategic, and in some ways, more powerful. That's why I pay attention to the tiny details now. The pauses, the body language, the carefully chosen appearances. Because Monarchy in 2026 is basically a non-stop content machine. And if we're being real, royal families now operate almost like media brands. Actually, sometimes I think Mr. Beast understands audience retention better than half the royal PR teams in Europe. Sounds ridiculous, right? But think about it. Every Leonor headline now is engineered for emotional reaction: future queen, military princess, disciplined heir, Spain's hope. Those are branding phrases. The palace is building a narrative strong enough to survive future crises before they even happen. That's smart, but it also creates another problem nobody talks about enough. What happens when the real Leonor conflicts with the version Spain has already fallen in love with? That's the danger, because eventually every public figure reaches the moment where image and reality collide. And when that happens inside a monarchy, the consequences become massive. Especially in Spain, where support for the institution has always felt more conditional than eternal. And I'll be honest here. Sometimes I think Leonor looks less nervous about becoming queen than she does about disappointing expectations. That's a completely different type of pressure. It's one thing to inherit a throne. It's another thing to inherit national anxiety. And I think Felipe knows that better than anyone alive. Remember, he inherited a crisis too. People forget how difficult his early reign actually was. He had to rebuild trust while distancing himself from the shadows surrounding his father. That changes a person. You don't survive that kind of institutional pressure without becoming hyper-aware of risk. So when Felipe looks at Leonor, I don't think he just sees his daughter. I think he sees the future survival of the monarchy itself. And honestly, that can become dangerous inside any family. Because once someone becomes the future, they stop being treated normally. Their life becomes strategic, managed, filtered, protected, controlled. And maybe that's why Leonor's story feels so strangely lonely sometimes despite all the public attention around her. The palace shows us crowds, but not closeness, ceremonies, but not vulnerability. We see uniforms more than friendships, duty more than personality, and I keep wondering if that's intentional. Because the less emotionally attached the public becomes to Leonor's private desires, the easier it is to preserve the institution around her. That's the hidden trade-off. The crown survives, but the person slowly disappears into the role. And if that sounds dramatic, just look across Europe. Royal families everywhere are adapting to a world that no longer automatically respects monarchy. Attention spans are shorter, criticism spreads faster, one bad moment becomes a global meme in minutes. That's why Leonor's generation of royals feels different from older generations. They are being trained for optics as much as leadership. And personally, I think Felipe is probably one of the strictest architects behind that strategy. Not because he's cold, but because he understands how unforgiving modern audiences have become. Especially younger audiences. One viral controversy today can undo 10 years of careful image building. That's terrifying for a monarchy. Which brings me back to the original question. Could the only man trying to secure Leonor's reign also become the biggest obstacle to it? I think yes. Because overprotection can become suffocation. Control can become resistance. And eventually every heir reaches a moment where they either become their own person or remain trapped inside someone else's fear. That's the crossroads I think Leonor is approaching now. Not publicly, not dramatically, quietly, internally. And honestly, that's why her story has become so interesting to watch lately. Because beneath all the ceremony, there's a very human conflict happening. How do you prepare someone to carry a crown without crushing them under its weight first? I don't think Europe has fully solved that question yet. Not Britain, not Spain, not any monarchy. And maybe that's why Leonor fascinates people right now more than almost any young royal in the world. She represents something bigger than tradition. She represents whether monarchy itself can survive modern reality. That's a massive burden for one person. Especially someone still trying to discover who she is behind the palace walls. And maybe, just maybe, the man standing closest to her is also the one most afraid of what happens if she ever steps too far outside the role designed for her. Not because he wants power, but because he knows exactly how quickly crowns can fall when the public stops believing in the story. And that might be the real truth behind Leonor's rise. Not glamour, not destiny, not royal fantasy, fear, carefully managed fear disguised as stability. And if I'm wrong, then Leonor eventually gets to become fully herself. But if I'm right, then the greatest battle of her future reign may not happen against politicians, critics, or the media. It may happen inside the palace itself. Quietly, behind smiles, Behind ceremonies. Behind that